I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford, and this is Women and Worth, a new podcast series from Worth Media.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights
For the record,
are human rights.
feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights.
You told the world that time's up on violence. You told the world that time's up on silence.
Justice is not a concept we read about in a book. Justice is about how much ladies get paid.
They say it's a myth, but it's not a myth. It's math.
This is the best time to be a woman. I want young women to really understand that and believe it. It's not that there aren't barriers. Of course there are barriers.
Each season we'll tackle significant challenges women face in the workplace and society at large, in the hopes that doing so may chart a path forward to accelerate progress. This is Season 1 of Women and Worth Female Fortunes. Over the course of 6 episodes, we'll discuss financial planning, investment strategies, career development, and opportunities to invest in women and more. Each episode will focus on a major stage in our financial lives, from post-college to retirement and living well. Today, Seema Hingorani joins us to discuss the lack of gender diversity in her field, investing and asset management, and how we get more women into the pipeline and ready to thrive in this industry.
So out of the $100 trillion in global assets managed professionally, women managed less than 5%. That is just terrible. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for investors.
Seema is the founder and chair of Girls Who Invest, a non-profit organisation dedicated to increasing the number of women in portfolio management and leadership in the asset management industry. Hi Seema.
Hi Juliet.
Thank you so much for being our first guest on our new podcast series.
Thank you very much. I'm honoured to be your first guest.
So in 2015, you founded Girls Who Invest, a company committed to training and placing the next generation of female asset managers to answer the age-old question of where are all the women in finance. What did you find when answering that question?
I founded Girls Who Invest as a result of my time at the New York City Pension Fund when I was then the chief investment officer of the $160 billion portfolio. And every manager in the world, investment manager in the world who wanted to manage New York City's money was then coming to meet with me. And every time I got to their organizational chart in their presentation, I'd look down at it and see hardly any women, if any, on their investment teams, which I believed was a serious problem in our industry. And every single person I spoke with agreed that it was a problem. But the answer I got back was, well, Seema, we would have more women on our investment teams if we could find them. We don't get resumes from women. So recognizing a pipeline problem, I said to the leaders in our industry, let's fix this. And so what I created was a college summer program to get young women interested in a career in investing. And importantly, what I learned when I went out there to speak to young women on campuses before I started the organization, a lot of young women don't even know about this industry. They don't know it's available to them, accessible to them. They especially don't know that it's interesting, stimulating, rewarding, and impactful. That was a big one. They would often say to me, Seema, I don't just want to make a lot of money in this world. I want to make a positive impact. And so I would say to them, oh my God, don't you realize you can do that by being an investor? You don't need to go to a nonprofit. You don't need to go into government service to do that. You can actually do that as an investor. And then, of course, they would say to me, well, I don't know what you mean, and I don't believe you. And so I would give them 3 simple examples. So I'd say to them, okay, how do you think Facebook and Amazon got to where they got without investors like us helping them grow and expand their businesses? Think about all the innovation you can be a part of in this world. And then for those of you who want to make a positive impact on the developing world, fantastic. Think about how so many people have clean water. It's because investors like us help build water treatment facilities. Oh, and you want to make a positive social impact? Fabulous. I was the chief investment officer for the city of New York. I was responsible for 700,000 teachers and firefighters and police officers for their retirement security. Think about that responsibility, and you could have that job. And suddenly their eyes go lit up. They come running up to me and say, where do we sign up? I'm like, great, we got those women. But then there's other women out there who do know about our industry. And frankly, what they know is not so great, particularly post the 2008 financial crisis. And it doesn't help when you have movies out there called The Wolf of Wall Street and shows on Showtime called Billions. So I thought, wow, we might have an image problem in our industry. And so a lot of the young women who did know about our business came to me and said, well, Seema, the way we think about it is a lot of you are just a bunch of mean, greedy, competitive people who sometimes go to jail. And I thought, wow, okay, oh man, that is true. There's some people out there like that. But oh my God, let me tell you about all the amazing women and men in our industry who are doing all the things I just described to you. And by the way, I'll introduce you to them one by one. And after doing that, we were flooded with applications for our program. And word of mouth spread like crazy around campuses around this country. And we had suddenly, we started this program in the summer of 2016. And from that to now, we have become the hottest ticket on campus.
And you mentioned that 80% of women stay in the investment business, that 80% of the women that have gone through the program. Why do you think that is? What do you think the program offers them that enables them to remain in the investment business?
So what we tried to do in these 4 weeks, and I made everything up. I'm an investor, and I've never done anything like this before in my life. But what we tried to do was build their confidence and prove to them and show them that they can do this job, and not only do this job, but do it really well. And we tried to inspire excitement and interest. And so in addition then to the core finance curriculum that they're taught by some of the best business school professors in the world, we bring in these speakers, we bring in women and men from our industry to come in and talk to them about their career and life experiences. We do presentation skills training, interview prep training, business etiquette training. We really want them to be so prepared and to be so confident when they go off into these internships that they hit the ground running and they're excited about what they're doing, and then they crush it.
We'll be right back. Let's take a moment to hear from Carrie Schwab-Pomerantz, President of Charles Schwab Foundation and Senior Vice President of Charles Schwab, official launch partner of the Women and Worth podcast.
Young women aspire to be financially independent, but unfortunately, they have a lot less savings and investing than young men, showing that this gender gap continues on, and we have a lot of work to do.
Talk to me about, obviously Girls Who Invest offers this extensive summer education program and internship placements, and you continue mentoring them beyond the program itself. What is the ultimate goal? Like, where do you want to take this?
The goal really is something I call my 30 by 30 vision. And that is to have 30% of the world's investable capital managed by women by the year 2030. And right now, that number is less than 5%. So out of the $100 trillion in global assets managed professionally, women manage less than 5%. That is just terrible. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for investors. It's not good for those teachers and firefighters and police officers, for our communities. There's so much research out there that shows and demonstrates that more gender diverse teams get better outcomes. We've seen it. We've read it. All of us have. And yet, when you're trying to make these really hard investment decisions, because investing is really hard, and it just gets harder every month, every quarter, every year, and gets more global, how could you not have the most diverse perspectives around the table when you're trying to make those decisions? That matters so much. So, yeah, it's something we have to make a lot of progress toward. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to get there. Because for me, the math never worked to get to that goal with just the pipeline, with the women coming in. Now, clearly, we're going to flood the system, and I'm so excited about that. But to get to those numbers, we clearly need to focus on the women that are currently in the industry. You put one woman as the chief investment officer of a sovereign wealth fund, that's $1 trillion. We're almost there. So that's what we need to do. And so right now, I'm very excited that with Girls Invest and me personally, I'm out there now speaking to a lot of leaders in our industry about this issue, is about their cultures. And I've often said that to them, particularly in the early days. I said, maybe we do have a pipeline problem, and yes, let's fix that. That's Girls Who Invest coming in. But let's have the other part of the conversation. No judging, no blaming, But there's still firms out there in our business that have cultures that are not so welcoming to women.
So I was going to ask that, what barriers are traditionally that have kept women out of finance more generally and out of asset management and investment specifically? You mentioned one which is around organisational cultures. Can you elaborate on that?
It starts, I think, very fundamentally at this idea that money is a man's thing. And and in our society, unfortunately, it goes very young. It starts very young, with parents teaching their girls and their boys about money. And then it continues up until we get to some of the most reputable, respected, most significant asset management firms out there. I think a lot of this, I feel like, is just human nature, and it's how people tend to operate. And until you step up and say, well, I don't know, let's take a step back here and let's really think about what are we doing and how are we doing it, and maybe there's a better way. And sometimes you have to push and make that happen.
Seema, I think everyone who listens to this podcast needs no convincing that more diverse teams generally perform better. And obviously diversity is broader than gender. However, I'm really curious in how men and women display power and thinking differently in your industry. For example, how they think about calculating and managing risk.
I've heard often, and too many times, honestly, that women are risk averse. And so therefore, they won't make you as much money, which is just ridiculous. Everybody should be risk aware, and that's the word I like to use, whether you're a man or a woman. And just by being risk aware doesn't mean you make less money. In fact, you could often make more money than the person who is not focused on risk. I would say to you, though, that there are differences, yes, between the way women and men invest. And some of that is related to the biological differences between men and women. So there's some great research out there that demonstrates that. And it just stems from the idea that men, having more testosterone, they tend to trade more frequently. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will lose you more money. It just means that they'll incur more transaction costs because of the frequent trading, and hence then they may not make you as much money because of those transaction costs. Compared with a woman who doesn't have as much testosterone, she's not going to trade as frequently, won't incur as much in transaction costs, and tends to invest more for the long term, which could result in a better return, taking into account risk. So there are biological differences that account for some of this. And then, I think just generally, and again, research out there about women being more collaborative, engaging with a team more than men tend to do, which whenever I think about differences between men and women in investing, that's why I have always said it's the combination of the two that makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. I honestly, personally, would never want to invest in an all-white male team, and an all-Indian woman team, or an all-black man team. I just wouldn't. And I don't know why others would. So I think the differences are valuable.
And when it comes to diversity in investment teams, are we moving in the right direction?
I think so. I mean, I'm very encouraged by what I've seen in the last 4 years with Girls Who Invest. I'm starting to see leadership in the industry respond to what we're trying to do now in terms of discussing their cultures, discussing their policies, discussing the way they do performance reviews. I mean, these are subtle things maybe, but they're really important things. And directionally, I think we're moving in, where we want to go. But it's a long process. And, I think everybody realizes that. But the fact that we're having these conversations, we're starting to make progress, people are taking action. I've always thought about this issue of the lack of gender diversity in the investment business on investment teams as a conversation, just women and men sitting around the table trying to figure this out. And I get it. It's hard and it's uncomfortable. But, we do a lot of hard things in our industry. Making money for people is really hard to do, and to do it well. And you know what? We do it pretty well. And so we can figure this out too.
And how was the financial crisis of 2008 and populist movements that followed affected the pipeline problem that you've set out to tackle through Girls Who Invest?
Yes, so I think there was a cloud over our industry for a number of years after the financial crisis, for obvious reasons and maybe not so obvious reasons. So we need to do some serious thinking and reevaluating and reorganizing teams and restructuring businesses. Some businesses went away entirely. Some teams went away entirely. People got fired. Not as many people went to jail as I would have thought, which I think is also a broad public opinion about that. That's troubling. But for the most part, I think the increase in regulation that was put in place, yeah, of course, there are nuances and people will disagree and agree, and things are changing now with the new administration in terms of those regulations. But I think a lot of that was necessary, and so that's in place. We've come a long way. I think things are better. I still don't believe, though, the trust is back the way it should be. And I still think, a lot of the public, the investors, the moms and dads and grandmothers and grandfathers are not still so trusting of the people managing this money. And we need to address that big time. And, one of the things with Girls Who Invest that also was very important to me is I didn't just want to create an opportunity for these young women, bring them in to this program, educate them about our industry, train them with the skills that they needed, providing them those tools, and then sending them off into our industry and say, okay, now go do status quo.
Our next episode this season will look at a stage of life that for many directly follows the post-college entry-level position that we're talking about today, which is motherhood. Is finance an industry that can accommodate families, do you think?
Absolutely. Actually, I think our industry is really great for women, right? Because, one, the market closes at 4 o'clock. And, okay, maybe you invest in Asia or in Europe, and so you sleep at odd times. But for the most part, it's a job that you can do anywhere, especially with technology. You could literally have your laptop sitting on a beach and invest your portfolio. It's an incredible job. It is, I think it's the best job out there. Clearly we need doctors and others to save the world and save lives. So we're not saving lives, that's true. But I think what we do is meaningful and helpful to people and important. And you can do this job virtually anywhere. And so the flexibility that women could have, whether they have kids of their own that they're looking after or elderly parents that they're looking after, everybody has a different situation in their lives. It doesn't just come down to women who want to have children, right? There's so many other related issues around needing to be with your family. And that applies to men too. And I think our industry to date has just focused on women in this regard, and I think we need to focus on the men also. And so certain firms are now starting to put in place policies around family paid leave, and that's really important because it will help level the playing field. It will help weed out some of these gender biases that exist inside some of these big firms.
And Seema, as we end our conversation, I want to ask, 25 years from now, what conversation will we be having about women's progress?
Well, I can say in the investment business, I believe we'll get to our goal that we'll have 30% of the world's investable capital managed by women. I believe that the leadership at the top will look different too. I think we'll see more women in those roles. We may even see our first CEO of a major bank in this country. It's happened in India. Why it's not happened here, I don't know. But, I think we will. One example is Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan Chase. He just elevated 2 women there who could potentially be one of his successor or be the successor. And so that's exciting, and I think we'll start to see that.
And how will we get there?
So definitely the pipeline coming in and keeping them in. That's a big part of it, right? Keeping those women in once they're in. That's a big part of our job at Girls Who Invest. But then it's really continuing the dialogue, an open dialogue, an honest dialogue with the men in our business, with women and men, again, sitting around the table, pushing this, because I don't think it happens without pushing it and making it a priority and then measuring it. We often hear that, if you don't measure it, it's not going to happen. It's true. And so we actually need to put in place this discipline to do it. And I think if we do that, we'll get there. I'm pretty confident of that.
And finally, Seema, what does worth mean to you?
It means a number of things, I think. Clearly, one would first think of, financial worth, net worth. But I think self-worth is a big deal, as I've seen with these young women coming through my program. Because I want them to know that they are amazing and they can do anything they want to do. And all I was trying to do, and what Girls Who Invest was trying to do, is present a real, viable, exciting option for them that had not been on the table.
And it's incredible, and you're clearly making huge inroads into that. So thank you, Seema. That's brilliant. You've been fantastic.
Thank you very much.
That was Seema Hingorani, founder and chair of Girls Who Invest and senior advisor at Crestview Partners. And that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review Women in Worth, or better yet, subscribe on your favourite listening app. Stay tuned for our next episode focusing on planning for the modern family. Until then, I'm Juliet Scott Croxford. Women in Worth is produced and edited by Karsha Busalian, and a special thanks to Worth Senior Vice President of Strategy and Growth, Alicia Hamilton. This episode is supported by our official launch partner, Charles Schwab. For more investing advice, visit www.schwab.com.